10. The Canberra Lights, 2014. On a summer night in 2014, residents across Canberra were left scratching their heads and reaching for their phones as a series of strange, flickering lights appeared in the night sky. The incident began with reports of a bright, white light that seemed to be descending slowly. This was quickly followed by more lights, which moved and changed shape in a way that was inconsistent with any known aircraft. Witnesses from different parts of the city reported seeing the same thing: silent, pulsating lights that would group together, then separate, moving with impossible agility. They weren't fireworks, nor were they flares. They weren't planes or drones, as their movements were too erratic and their silence was unnerving. For several hours, the lights performed what seemed like a synchronized dance across the sky before finally fading away. The event sparked a frenzy of social media posts, videos, and eyewitness accounts. While some suggested the lights could have been Chinese lanterns or a military exercise, no official explanation was ever provided. The Australian Capital Territory, usually known for its political calm, was momentarily gripped by a mystery in its skies. The Canberra Lights stand out as a modern, high-tech sighting in a major city, leaving a digital trail of questions that remain unanswered. 9. Wycliffe Well, ongoing, Northern Territory. Wycliffe Well, a remote roadhouse on the Stuart Highway in the Northern Territory, proudly calls itself the UFO capital of Australia. This reputation is built on decades of continuous UFO sightings, dating back to World War II. During the war, an army driver reportedly saw a silver craft hovering over a group of soldiers near the Devil's Marbles, just a short distance away. Since then, the area has become famous for its frequent and varied UFO sightings. Visitors and locals alike report seeing strange lights, cigar-shaped objects, and even the occasional landing. The roadhouse itself leans into the legend, with its walls covered in news clippings and an alien-themed decor. The UFO activity is so common that a local saying goes, "If you stayed up all night looking, you would be considered unlucky not to see anything, rather than lucky to see something." Ufologists believe the area's high concentration of UFO activity is due to its remote location and its proximity to a powerful ley line, or energy line that acts as a highway for these crafts. While skeptics point to the possibility of meteorites, satellites, and the isolated location allowing for more vivid interpretation, the sheer number and diversity of sightings at Wycliffe Well over many decades make it a truly unique and ongoing Australian UFO phenomenon. 8. Gosford UFO Sightings, 1994, New South Wales. In 1994, the skies over Gosford, on the central coast of New South Wales, became the stage for a series of incredible and well-documented UFO sightings. The events began with reports from residents of strange, unexplained lights moving silently and at high speed in the night sky. But the most dramatic part of the story involved a group of people who were camping near the area. Multiple witnesses reported seeing a large, triangular-shaped craft hovering silently over the water. It was described as having red, green, and white lights, and seemed to be observing the area. The craft moved without sound and would disappear and reappear in a flash. The sightings were so numerous and so consistent that they drew the attention of local media and UFO investigators. One of the most famous witnesses was Moira McGee, a local resident who later wrote a book about her own experiences and the investigation. McGee and others described not just lights, but a tangible, solid craft. The Gosford sightings were unique because of the number of people who witnessed the same thing over an extended period. It wasn't a one-off event, but a sustained period of unusual aerial activity that left many in the community convinced they had been visited by something not of this world. 7. Boyup Brook Sightings, 1970s to 1980s, Western Australia. The rural town of Boyup Brook in Western Australia became a hotbed of UFO activity throughout the 1970s and 80s. A series of sightings, often by multiple witnesses, turned the quiet country community into a focal point for researchers. The encounters were diverse, from strange lights in the night sky to close-up sightings of metallic, structured craft. One of the most compelling aspects of the Boyup Brook sightings was the consistency of the reports. Witnesses, including farmers, police officers, and regular residents, described similar objects: silent, often triangular or disc-shaped craft with flashing lights that moved with impossible speed and made abrupt turns. The objects would often hover silently over paddocks, causing livestock to become agitated. The sheer volume of sightings over a prolonged period made it difficult to dismiss the claims. The Boyup Brook cases weren't isolated incidents, they were a pattern of sightings that suggested a sustained presence. While there was no single, dramatic event like the Knowles family encounter, the collective weight of these numerous, credible reports created a powerful argument that something truly unusual was happening in the skies above this small Western Australian town. Rosedale Encounter, 1980, Victoria. In the early morning hours of October 1, 1980, something extraordinary happened on a farm near Rosedale, Victoria. Farmer George Blackwell was awakened by the frantic, panicked sounds of his cattle. He grabbed his motorbike and went to investigate, riding towards the commotion. What he saw was a sight that defied all logic. Hovering above his paddock was a huge, disc-shaped object, about 15 feet high, with a row of porthole-like lights along its side. A bright, white light shone down from the underside of the craft. As Blackwell watched, a blast of hot air and an intense white light shot out from the object. He was knocked off his motorbike and to the ground, the force of the blast temporarily stunning him. When he recovered, the object was gone. But it left behind physical evidence. On the ground where the light had hit was a large, circular burn mark. The leaves on a nearby tree were scorched. A large water tank, which had been directly beneath the hovering craft, was found the next day to be completely empty and strangely contorted, as if by immense pressure. The story was quickly picked up by local and national media. The Rosedale incident became a classic close encounter case with physical evidence, multiple witnesses to the initial light, and a terrified farmer whose life was changed forever. Despite the compelling evidence, authorities were unable to offer a conventional explanation, and the case remains one of Australia's most baffling and detailed UFO encounters. 5. The Mundrail Incident, 1988, South Australia. This incident, which happened just a short distance from the Knowles family encounter, adds another layer of mystery to the desolate Nullarbor plain. A bus driver, along with several of his passengers, reported seeing a bright, glowing object. While the exact details are not as well documented as the Knowles family story, the sighting was significant because it involved multiple, independent witnesses. The bus driver and passengers watched as a bright light, described as a glowing, reddish-orange ball, moved erratically across the sky. It appeared to follow the bus for a time before darting off at incredible speed. This sighting was a separate incident from the Knowles families, but it happened in the same general area and around the same time. The fact that a bus full of people, along with the driver, all witnessed the same bizarre aerial phenomenon lent significant credibility to the story. This incident, often overshadowed by the more dramatic Knowles account, serves as a powerful corroboration of unusual activity in the region. It highlights the vast, isolated nature of the Nullarbor, a perfect canvas for unexplained events, and the shared experiences of people who were all just trying to get from one place to another. For those on that bus, it was an experience that forever changed their perception of the world and what might exist beyond it. 4. Tully Saucer Nest Incident, 1966, Tully, Queensland. Just a few months after the Westall sighting, another incredible incident unfolded in a remote part of Queensland. On the morning of January 19, 1966, a banana farmer named George Pedley was driving his tractor near a lagoon on his property. Suddenly, he heard an ear-piercing hissing sound that seemed to be coming from the lagoon itself, a noise that cut right through the rumble of his engine. He stopped to check his tires, but before he could, a large, grayish flying saucer, about 25 feet in diameter, rose out of the water at incredible speed, spinning as it went. Pedley was frozen in place, a mix of fear and astonishment washing over him. The object shot upwards, disappearing in a puff of blue-gray vapor. Once the shock wore off, Pedley cautiously walked over to the lagoon to see what had happened. He found a massive, circular area of reeds that had been perfectly flattened in a clockwise spiral. The reeds were not just bent, they were completely uprooted and matted down, as if a huge, spinning machine had landed there. The pattern was a perfect circle, about 30 feet in diameter, in the middle of the lagoon. The discovery made international headlines. The site was investigated by police and members of the Royal Australian Air Force. While some suggested a natural phenomenon like a willy-willy, a type of whirlwind, the unusual way the reeds were matted and uprooted, as well as the initial sighting by Pedley, made a conventional explanation hard to swallow. The Tully saucer nest became a precursor to the modern crop circle phenomenon and a legendary story of physical evidence left behind by an unknown aerial craft. 3. Frederick Valentich disappearance, 1978, Bay Strait, Victoria. On the evening of October 21, 1978, Frederick Valentich, a 20-year-old pilot, took off from Mundrail Airport in Melbourne for a routine training flight to King Island. The weather was clear, and Valentich was an experienced pilot. But at 7:06 p.m., his voice came over the radio to air traffic control, sounding unusually tense. He reported a large, unknown aircraft following him at about 4,500 feet. The controller confirmed there was no other known traffic in the area. Valentich described the object as having 4 bright landing lights, and that it was orbiting and playing games with him. The aircraft, he said, was a long shape, but he couldn't identify it. At 7:09 p.m., he reported that the unknown craft had returned and was approaching him at high speed from the southeast. His next radio transmission was more panicked. He stated, "It's hovering and it's not an aircraft." The transmission was interrupted by a strange, metallic scraping sound, a sound that has baffled investigators for decades. It lasted for 17 seconds. His final words were, Melbourne, that strange craft is hovering on top of me again. It's hovering and it's not an aircraft." Then, nothing. Silence. An extensive air and sea search was launched, but no trace of Frederick Valentich or his Cessna 182 was ever found. The disappearance remains one of Australia's most enduring aviation mysteries. Was he abducted? Did he become disoriented and crash? The official conclusion was unknown, leaving the door open for speculation and solidifying his story as a cornerstone of Australian UFO lore. 2. The Knowles Family encounter, 1988, Nullarbor Plain. The vast, isolated stretch of the Nullarbor Plain is known for its endless highway and dark, starry skies. But for the Knowles family, their journey across this iconic landscape in 1988 turned into a terrifying night of a close encounter. It was around 4 a.m. when Faye Knowles, along with her 3 sons, was driving their sedan just west of Mundrail. A bright, floating light appeared in the distance. At first, they thought it was another vehicle, perhaps a large road train, but the light was behaving strangely, moving erratically. As they got closer, the light suddenly darted towards them, a huge, egg-shaped object with a bright, glowing bottom. It began to hover directly over their car, illuminating the entire interior with a brilliant white light. A high-pitched humming sound filled the air, and the family began to feel disoriented and nauseous. Faye later described the sensation as something going into our heads. Then, the car was violently shaken, as if something heavy had landed on the roof. It was lifted off the road and tossed around. Panicked, Faye sped up, but the car became uncontrollable. One of the tires burst. The car swerved off the road and came to a stop. Terrified, the family scrambled out and hid in the dark bushland, watching as the object hovered above their now damaged vehicle before silently disappearing. They made it to the next town, Ceduna, and reported the incident to the police. Police Sergeant Fred Longley took the report seriously, especially after examining the car. It was covered in a strange, fine, grey ash-like substance, and the roof had a large dent. The Knowles family's horrifying experience on the Nullarbor remains one of Australia's most compelling and physical UFO abduction claims, with tangible evidence that left authorities baffled. 1. The Westall UFO Incident, 1966, Melbourne, Victoria. The morning of April 6, 1966, was like any other at Westall High School in suburban Melbourne. Students were enjoying their recess, the air filled with the usual sounds of laughter and chatter. But suddenly, a strange silence fell over the playground. Eyes turned skyward, fixed on a sight that would change their lives forever. A large, metallic, disc-shaped object, estimated to be about twice the size of a family car, was hovering silently in the sky. It was described as silver gray, with a slight purple hue at times, and seemed to thicken and thin as it moved. The object remained there for several minutes, slowly descending behind a row of pine trees bordering the Grange, a nearby bushland reserve. As students and some teachers watched in stunned disbelief, a number of smaller, faster aircraft, described by witnesses as 5 unidentified planes, began to circle the area, as if in pursuit. When the bell rang, a few brave students, unable to contain their curiosity, ignored the teachers and ran to the Grange to investigate. What they found was a large, circular patch of flattened, scorched grass where the object had supposedly landed. The ground was described as boiled or pressed down. Within days, authorities arrived. Reports flooded local newspapers, and the story became a sensation. But then, a strange silence began to descend. Teachers were reportedly warned not to speak about the incident. Students were told to stay quiet. To this day, there is no official report or record of what happened, leading many to believe there was a deliberate cover-up. The Westall incident remains Australia's most significant and mysterious mass UFO sighting, with hundreds of witnesses but no official explanation.